Hey everybody, welcome to Lunch with Jamie at breakfast time. This is a very unusual format because this is the first time that my guest is here in person and we're not in front of a crowd. So bear with me. I'm gonna stumble through this a bit. That's why I invited Wes on, because I know he would help me along. He has a philosophy of leave no man behind. So that's why I brought him on today. So we're gonna get right into it. He's got a packed schedule, so we're gonna finish up right around 9:42, 9:43, just to give you, or 12:42, 12:43, or wherever you are. So we have so much to cover. Wes, thank you for being here.
Of course, man. It's so good to see you. Always, seriously. Thank you.
Always good to see you.
Yeah.
So since there's no important topics to talk about today, no newsworthy things, we're gonna start.
It's all quiet.
We're gonna start with the most important thing. And although this is Lunch with Jamie and it's breakfast time, I have to know, when I finally make that Maryland trip,
Oh, yeah.
where are you taking me on our food crawl?
So there are so many great places. I really think that Maryland is actually the best foodie state in the country. And I don't care, like LA, Louisiana, like fight me on it. I'm telling you, it's Maryland.
I'm gonna fight you on it, but we're gonna do it later. But you can, since you're my guest, sure. Maryland's the best foodie state in the world, actually.
It's actually in the world.
100%.
It's actually in the world.
I totally agree.
So it depends on what you're looking for, but listen, I mean, it's Maryland. I'm gonna start you off with seafood, and I think we have. If you want authentic Maryland crab cakes, I think it's the best bite that you are gonna have anywhere in the globe. And I'm gonna take you to Coco's to go get the most fantastic crab cake around. It's not fancy, but it is like straight jumbo lump crab meat, and it is sweet, and it is ridiculous, and it is delicious.
I'm in.
It's fantastic.
I'm gonna skiddy a Coco's. That's amazing.
Just go to Coco's.
One of Kelly's favorite meals is a crab cake, so she'll be becoming first, probably even.
I'm telling you, Coco's, and another one actually is Timbuktu's. Timbuktu's is another one where it's like, it's massive. Like, make sure you don't eat before you have a Timbuktu's crab cake, but it is crazy good. But Coco's, Timbuktu's, you're not gonna beat them.
All right, on my trip, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go to an Orioles game. We're gonna go to a Nationals game because my friend's son James Woods they're one of their best players.
Yes,
so we're gonna do. And you're you'll root for the Nats when you come to that.
If as long as they're not playing the Orioles.
Great. Okay. Okay. One more personal question. So I am sad to have learned that I'm older than you, which really upset me in this research. I don't know how I just learned this, but I do know that we have some similar music tastes. And when I was in college and high school, "Time for Some Action" by Redman was one of my hype songs. I know you have an affinity for Redman, Method Man.
Yes, I do.
What are a couple things on your playlist right now?
Oh man. Well, so listen. So I'm very much still into old school hip hop. Old school hip hop, and the new stuff is fine. Like, I'm really actually digging a lot of Kendrick Lamar stuff, and I mean, I really do think he's.
By the way, where's Kendrick from?
Is he from California?
Yeah, he's from California.
But I heard he wanted to be from Maryland.
Oh, right, of course.
I heard he said that's his one regret, that he's not from Maryland.
Of course.
But old school hip hop is, I mean, because it's my childhood.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can go back and listen to DOS Effects and Arrested Development, and just literally go back to, I can tell you where I was when you were hearing, Method and Redman, when you were hearing this, when the whole Wu-Tang, I mean, 36 Chambers is crazy. It's like, I can tell you where I was. And so the beautiful thing for me about hip hop is, not only was it a great way of people actually being able to understand you and celebrate, but also it was a perfect way for us to be able to find a measure of acceptance in a space and in a world, and to see how, the culture that we understood is now for a global understanding. And that was always pretty awesome.
Right. Well, I felt sort of as someone who was sort of sneaking my way into that culture, because I actually, which you probably didn't even know, my first job was working for a rap magazine. It was called Rap Sheet Magazine.
I did not know that.
I was the first employee and only employee in New York. My title was New York Guy. And this will probably surprise you and the majority of people listening. I spent so much time with Onyx that they planned to shave my head, so I had a bald head like they did.
Yes. Sticky Fingers and Fredda, that's right.
And I can't even believe you referenced DOS Effects. I was close with Crazy Dre's and DOS Effects. They were one of my favorite groups. But digging back into your personal life a bit, I mean, at that time for you, so that's I looked at Time for Some Action. That's 92.
That's right.
You are, I want to say 14,
That's
15,
right.
16 years old. That's not the Wes Moore we know today.
Nah, no, not at all.
So
Actually, at that time, when Time for Some Action came out, I was first sent to military school because I was asked to leave the other school I was at in New York. I had a so I mean I was a kid who literally, I mean, I had handcuffs on my wrist by the time I was 11.
hmm,
So I had a lot of challenges when I was coming up, a lot of anger issues, and honestly, I think a lot of it stemmed from, my father died when I was young. My father died in front of me when I was 3 years old, and so my mother was raising me and my two sisters. Had a really difficult time with it, and eventually she called up her parents, my grandparents, who lived up in the Bronx in New York, and my grandfather was a minister in the South Bronx. My grandmother was a public school teacher. And, I always say their house was barely big enough for them, but they figured out a way to make it big enough for all of us.
wow.
When my mom called and said she needed help. And so I came up really, in New York in this culture, because I think I got up there when I was like 5 or 6 years old, uh, in the culture of everything that was happening in the Bronx during the 1980s and 1990s. The fact that was the burgeoning time of the crack era. That was the burgeoning time of where there was just a lot of violence, and you saw neighborhoods changing very, very quickly. But music and hip hop really almost became the soundtrack to that evolution, because you also saw this new music that was lifting up a community and exposing a community in a way that people had not seen or experienced. And so I remember, when like Time for Some Action's coming out, I'm literally at a military school that I was sent to because of some issues that I was having, but where I'm in this new environment, in this new place, where they're waking me up early in the morning, they're, shaving my head, they're making me do push-ups, they're doing all this kind of stuff. But while everything was new and everything was different, there were certain things that could remain the same. And in some ways, that was kind of like a connection to the culture that I thought was really important.
What did that Wes Moore think he was going to be? And I'll take you, I'd say right before you go to military academy.
Yeah.
What was your dream at that point? What was your hope? Could you dream that far ahead?
Honestly, it's a really interesting question, Jamie, because I actually think that I didn't really start thinking about what do I want to be until later in life.
Hmm.
And actually, I think there's a real danger to that. Because if you don't know where you want to go, then good luck getting there.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So like, actually, I think one of the real complicated things about my childhood and when I was coming up was, when you ask a kid, what do you want to be or what do you want to do? And they have answers, I couldn't give you one. And I actually think that was partially part of the problem, is that I couldn't give you an answer. And so that's why in some ways that's why I felt a bit just wayward, because I don't think I really had like a thing I was aiming for, a thing I was shooting for. I think that probably started later on in life.
Right. Well, safe to say, this journey of yours has taken you to a lot of different places. Yeah. So I'm going to get to today, because we could spend an hour just talking on that journey, or hours.
Yeah.
Because the twists and turns that you took from the time you were a boy in handcuffs, a boy losing their father, to the time you were at military school, to the time in the military, to the time at Robin Hood, and now to governor of your self-proclaimed greatest state in America, greatest in the world. Yes.
The American example.
This is no governor could imagine the time that we're truly living in right now. And it's really interesting. I mean, my adult life, I don't remember a time where, you can name the governor of so many states right now, even if you're not, in paying attention to politics. Right. It's almost like professional athletes at this point.
Yes.
The idea that the average person can name the governor of Maryland or the governor of Illinois or the governor of, Texas. So you're coming to LA at a very unusual time as well. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on? I've been talking to Governor Newsom. Talk a bit about your experience being on the ground here, and the situation with the National Guard and the protests.
It's I've been in touch with Governor Newsom, and it's a really complicated time for not just, for him and for all these other governors, because you're right, it's relatively unprecedented in what we're seeing right now, and it's hard and it's difficult because I'm thinking about the people who are protesting and have a right to peacefully protest, but who in many ways they are being co-opted by a lot of folks who are essentially the professionals, right? The opportunists, the ones who will use this opportunity to go loot and do violence. And it's like, and I feel for the people who were the peaceful protesters who have a genuine argument and have a constitutional right to make a peaceful argument, but in many ways are being co-opted by some of these folks. I feel for these National Guardsmen, and I say that because I'm a person who, I wore the uniform of this country proudly, right? I mean, I was a paratrooper in the U.S. Army. I served with the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan. I was very clear that if you give us training and a clear mission, we can go execute our job. But without training and without a clear mission, you're really putting us in a very difficult circumstance and situation. And frankly, that's one that's pretty dangerous for us as well. That, I feel bad for law enforcement who understand their job and understand their capabilities of being able to control situations. But when you are being big-footed and people telling you, well, you need this and you need that, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, which not just makes your operational capacity more complicated and jurisdictional authority more complicated, but it's also like, guys, this is what we're trained for. So this is just, it's a really hard situation across the board. I mean, the thing that we've got to stay centered on is making sure that people are safe has got to be the number one priority. And stopping those who are using this as an opportunity for violence, stopping those that are using this as an opportunity to break laws, making sure there's accountability for those who are doing that has got to be the top and number one priority on all this stuff. And at the same time, we've got to be able to call out the fact that many of these decisions that are being made by the White House right now, they're not helpful. Because if you trust the people on the ground, like listen to the people on the ground. And as a governor, I can tell you what capacities we have. For any situation, I can tell you we have X amount of local law enforcement. We have X amount of state personnel. We have technological assets. Like, I can give you a breakdown because we can be on the ground and we're talking to our people on the ground. And I always know that I have the constitutional authority to then rev up and say, if I want to actualize and operationalize our National Guard for a situation, I know I always have that authority. So that's why when these decisions are being made, it's best to actually speak with the governor.
Right.
Because they know best about what is the need. And so that's the frustrating thing that I think we're seeing in all this, is that these decisions are not being made in coordination with the governor or in coordination with the state. They're being done instead of. And I think you never get good solutions when you're not actually talking and working with people on the ground.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, and we talked about this, LA is not burning right now.
Mm-hmm.
LA is not under a siege by the protesters. This is a very localized protest that's going on, that should be going on, right? I mean, again, that's one of the parts of being American, right, is the ability to protest. That's one of the most important tools that we have, that so much change has happened by. I mentioned this to you, I really do feel for the National Guardsmen, especially, right? Because, I mean, they're just doing their job. They're not, I mean, nothing that's happening right now is the fault of the National Guardsmen.
Right.
And I'm sure, like everything, maybe there's some bad actors. I haven't personally seen it or heard about it. So, maybe there's a situation and the actions of one person could lead to frustration. But it is a really unique situation that we're dealing with.
And if the people on the ground are saying that, listen, we need additional supports, we need this, again, the governor always has. I take very, very seriously the fact that I'm the commander-in-chief of the Maryland National Guard. It's a responsibility that I have. I have a deadly seriousness about how we train, about how we recruit, about how we actualize and operationalize their work, about where I send them. And again, as someone who wore the uniform, it is something I do take very personally as well. And I also know that I would never, ever deploy my folks into a situation that they are either not trained for, they're not prepared for, and they don't understand what success looks like.
Right.
Like I take that very seriously, and so that I think in many ways for folks is the my heart goes out for them
Yeah.
because they at a bare minimum for people who are willing to put on this uniform in this country and put the flag of their state on their shoulder, that at a bare minimum they deserve that.
Right. It's obviously hard to know how you'd react to the same thing happening in Maryland. I know you've been counseling and talking to Governor Newsom, who I think has been doing a great job. You've said in the past, I'll work with anyone, but I'll bow to no one.
That's right.
Which I think is the right phrase for this time. How are you applying that to working with the Trump administration right now?
Yeah. I believe deeply in partnership. And I think that it's the way that we've led in Maryland. It's the reason that I think we've been able to get a lot of good things done with both Democrat and Republican supports, in our state. I mean, Maryland's actually a pretty unique example right now where the lion's share of every single bill that I have passed, the lion's share of every single executive order that I've done has been done in partnership with Democrats and Republicans. So Maryland's actually a pretty unique place right now in the country. I also, though, know that my interest in working with the federal administration goes in the fact that as a state governor, we want to have a good relationship with the federal government. I also, though, know that partnership is not a one-way exercise. Right. Partnership means there is exchange both ways. Partnership means there's ideas being exchanged both ways. Partnership means that there's compromise in both ways. So we're just, on certain measurements, there's just no seeming desire for a partnership with our states. I'm thankful for the work that we've been able to do on some fronts, on some infrastructure projects, et cetera. That's been great. But no, I'm not going to bend the knee. I'm not built that way.
Right.
And I don't think that's necessary and required for the people of my state, where we are going to stand up for our values. We're going to stand up for our principles. And I'm always going to stand up for my people. And so when we're watching things like this assault on our federal workers, where, there's a greater level of exposure that Maryland has than any other state in the country. I have over 260,000 federal workers in the state of Maryland. There's over 160,000 federal jobs in the state of Maryland, because people remember, everything from NIH to the CDC to Social Security, all those places, they are in Maryland. So these are entities that are tethered to us. And so when you're assaulting the work of the people there, when you're randomly laying people off, in some cases illegally, that's not a glancing blow at me. That's a direct shot at me and my people. And I'm always going to defend my people. And so that has become, I think, the challenge, where we just see that the relationship between the federal government and our states has just been severed in many cases. And there's not a desire for the kind of partnership that we would hope for.
What do you say, and what do you think about the law firms that have sort of capitulated to Trump, the CEOs? There's obviously the argument that, people need to figure out a way to keep their bottom lines, profitable. They need to be able to keep people with jobs, and, and the schools as well. They're all in obviously very tough places, and we'd like to think everybody would just do the morally right thing all the time. But whether you have shareholders or you have federal funding that you need, it's not always so black and white.
No.
So, what do you what's your sort of perspective on those different? And obviously, each one of them is different. But
I mean, each one of those is different, and you're right where it's difficult to give a blanket answer. But the thing I do know is this: at the end of the day, I got to look in the mirror, and I need to be comfortable that I stuck by my values, right? And that I stuck by my oath. That I took an oath that I was going to protect my people. I took an oath that all 6.5 million Marylanders matter to me, and I was going to fight for each and every one of them. Where none more than another, but every single Marylander was going to get my undivided loyalty, right? And so I think that when we are if we get into the habit of starting to make decisions on things that start to feel transactional, opportunistic, or things that we think in some ways is compromising our values because of a situation that frankly in many cases are just fleeting anyway. I think it's a very dangerous slippery slope to fall into. I think you know, especially in moments like this, I think it's important to be centered in who you are, centered in what your values are, centered in the oath that you took, and know that winds are going to change and there will be ebbs and flows. But as long as you can be firm in those things, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to make sure that you're honoring the reason and the people that helped to put you there in the first place. And you're going to be better on the other side of what really is a very dangerous moment.
Yeah. How do you see the role of the governor today looking forward, and has it changed in a significant way? And is that directly related to Trump, or is that sort of just based on where we are politically or from a country? I mean, it's hard now to even remember back to 2015, pre-Trump coming down the escalator. But what do you think? It does seem like it's playing such a different role today.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of the reasons I so love being a governor. And like when people said to me, like, what made you want to get into politics? I was like, I didn't. I wanted to be the governor. I mean, because governor is such a different kind of role. Oh. You are your state's chief executive. Right. You know, you introduce the budget within your state. Mm-hmm. You know, there's only one thing that is required for something to become a law inside of the state of Maryland, and that's my signature. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like it's an awesome responsibility, and it's an awesome job, because we don't have to just rail against what's happening. I get a chance to show an alternative. Mm. So, you know, and I always say with Martine, I'm a show don't tell kind of leader. I'm gonna show you what a difference could look like. Not just tell you about it, I'm gonna show you, right? And I think of what's happening, for example, in the state of Maryland right now, where despite the fact that we're watching this assault on our federal workers, despite the fact that we're losing thousands of federal workers by you know, this DOGE project, and what the Trump administration is doing, we have found ways of taking our federal workers, streamlining them into available and necessary state jobs, private sector jobs, making sure that they are taken care of. For example, I'm telling people, if I have a person who's qualified and interested, get them certified, get them trained, get them in classrooms where we have a shortage of teachers, get them in hospitals where we have a shortage of nurses. Let's take these skill sets and the genius of some of these people and actually put it to use in places that the state needs it. That we made Maryland the first state in the country that now has a service year option for all of our high school graduates. That all of our high school graduates have a chance to have a year of paid service to the state of Maryland. That is not just giving them a way to address something that makes their heart beat faster, but it's also helped to get them inside the workforce. I signed the largest mass pardon in the history of the United States of America for misdemeanor cannabis convictions, because I said that not every sentence should be a life sentence. And the results have been that despite what we're seeing nationally, Maryland's unemployment rate has, for the 15th straight month, is now amongst the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. Our unemployment rate right now in the state of Maryland is 3.1%, more than a full point lower than the national average. Wow. Despite the fact that when I first got in, we were 43rd in the country in unemployment. Wow. So it's a thing I love about being a governor. It's like, give me a hard problem, and let us go and get it done, and get it done fast. Fix it and make sure we're bringing everyone along with us. And so I think this is a great moment for governors, right? Because I think that, you know, that people get a chance to see what executive leadership could be and see what an alternative is. Right.
Yeah. I want to get into the Democratic Party overall right now, but I also, you know, I do think, you know, you have to work with governors from other states, you know, surrounding states, different parties. I just did a trip where I flew into Pittsburgh, I stayed in Ohio, and I was working in West Virginia.
Oh yeah.
It's one of the coolest things about America.
It really is.
And I went back and forth between Ohio and West Virginia all day. Yeah. And it was just like, I was like, this country is so cool.
Yeah.
There's no, like we are the United States of America. And we have to figure out a way to get back to that.
That's right.
I'm so excited. My older daughter, Riley, is in school in North Carolina.
Yep. And
I just love the fact that she gets to spend time there. I get to go visit. It's just great to be in a different state with different people.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about the Democratic Party, and let's talk about, which now we do have to get a little partisan.
Yeah.
We're obviously in a very tough time. And my question for you is, what is the Democratic Party for as of today? What does it stand for? It seems to be a question that nobody clearly, concisely can answer.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to Wes Moore?
So I think about kind of my journey into the Democratic Party, where I don't come from a political background or a political or partisan. I mean, I'd never run for office before in my life before I ran for governor. I always say that I had to convince family members to vote for me when I ran for governor, but it's not because we're not cool. It's because I didn't convince them to vote. Like I don't come from a political family. But the thing that I know is that oftentimes I have got a chance to see, I've had a chance to see what a lot of the frustration was. And the frustration was just a lack of urgency. The frustration was that we spend a whole lot of time, and not just, Democrats, but in kind of American politics as a whole, with bureaucracy and slowing things up without understanding that people are feeling pain right now. And they feel like the pain is actually coming from the laws that were passed, coming from the bureaucracies that have been created, coming from the politicians that are sitting in the seats. And so I really believe that this has got to be a time when the Democrats have got to stop being the party of no and slow and start being the party of yes and now. Like move fast, because I think that's what people are asking for. When we knew that we had a crisis of violence within our society, where we had in Baltimore City, we had 300 plus homicides for the 8 straight years before I was the governor. We saw the homicide rate across the state had nearly doubled. The non-fatal shooting rate did double. Now, we said we could sit there and do analysis, and we could sit there and do bureaucracy, and we could sit there and do studies. And you know what's going to happen? More people are going to die because we're not moving with urgency. And so what did we decide to do? We made historic investments in local law enforcement. We made historic investments in technology and predictive analytics. We made historic investments in supporting community groups and working with our local elected officials and our state's attorneys and the U.S. attorney, where Maryland is actually unique, where we're one of the only states that actually helps to fund the U.S. attorney out of balance sheet to help turn some of these cases federal. And what's been the result? For the past 2 years, Maryland has had amongst the fastest drops in violent crime anywhere in America. And Baltimore City, the last time a homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I wasn't born yet.
Wow.
Urgency.
That's amazing.
People said we've got to move now. When we had the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, when a ship the size of 3 football fields slammed into it, taking out 13% of my state's economy. And when people told me that first morning that it could take up to 11 months to be able to clear that channel, we got it done in 11 weeks.
Wow.
Urgency. And I think we've got to start being the party that moves with urgency, because the pain that people are feeling, it's not a future pain. It's a right now pain. And I think if you are moving slowly, you're showing that you are not empathetic to what people are feeling. You need to move with a kind of urgency like that pain was yours. Right. And that's what I think the party's got to start doing.
I love that. And I think that is spot on. And I think if you read Ezra Klein's book, Abundance, which is required reading for everybody, and shows where the Democratic Party has failed in many ways. Yeah. But at the same time, it made me even prouder to be a Democrat, because I do believe what they talk about is what things we still stand for.
Yes.
We're just sort of stuck in this place of not wanting to ruffle feathers, not wanting to piss people off, not wanting to make public, special interest groups angry or different sections. But I am going to push back a little bit on your answer.
Yeah, of course.
Because we lost working class voters. Yeah. We lost men, young men. We lost college. We lost every single group. Yes. There was that study that came out in the New York Times, like 1,200 counties, over the last 10 years, and we lost. What does it mean to be a Democrat, though? what does a Democrat stand for today? What do you stand? What do you
Yeah.
stand for? I mean, in essence, you're a Democrat, but what's the Democratic Party stand for?
I think that the Democratic Party has got to stand on creating opportunity for people and moving with a sense of urgency around it. And this is where I think the urgency does matter, right? Is that like people can say like, we stand for creating opportunities and we stand for increasing wages or we stand for supporting working class voters or we stand for da da da. And that can be a message and that can be a statement. But if you say that, why are there places still in this country that have a minimum wage of $8 and $9? You can't say that and think that we actually believe you if you're not doing things like raising minimum wages and making life more affordable for people. You can't say we stand for creating, more housing for people and creating wealth, and then you have restrictive housing laws and people can't build and you're not giving support to first-time homeowners. You can't say, well, I'm for making sure that we can give people an opportunity to employment no matter what their stop is. And then you have people with misdemeanor cannabis convictions who still can't get home loans or who can't get a barber's license. Or young people who are telling you can do anything you want to do, but then we say, but the only way you can do it is if you go to a four-year college. It's not real. So I think that we've got to, we can say that we are about creating opportunity. We want more, as we say in Maryland, it's about work, wages, wealth, right? But then you actually got to move fast and back it up. So when we say work, wages, and wealth in Maryland, the fact that we have gone from being 43rd in the country to now having amongst the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country, that we have quadrupled the amount of apprentices that we have in our state, doing more things on trade and apprenticeship programs and saying that not everyone needs to go to a four-year college to have economic opportunity. The fact that one of the first things I did was raise the minimum wage in the state of Maryland because we should stop disincentivizing work, and gone should be the day when you have people who are working jobs, and in some cases multiple jobs, and still living at or below a poverty line. When we're talking about wealth, it means being able to support our entrepreneurs, support capital, support our Black-owned businesses and our women-owned businesses and our veteran-owned businesses, and also being able to do things like increasing home ownership and increasing inventory and making it easier for people to build and stop allowing everything to be a no when it comes to building in areas. And so the reason that I say that is because that's not a messaging change. Work, wages, and wealth wasn't a messaging change. It actually became a North Star for how we're doing our work. And that's the thing I think the Democrats have got to start doing. It's not about what we're saying. It's about what are we doing? And are you actually moving faster? Are you making it easier? Because if not, then call it whatever you want. Throw whatever slogan you want. People are still not going to feel you because they're not seeing an impact of what you're actually saying.
Right. I appreciate that. I mean, I do think, Donald Trump has shown us as the greatest marketer and salesman, since P.T. Barnum, that bold, big statements, proclamations, ideas work. People pay attention. They listen to them. Sadly, nobody knows that the average person doesn't know that over the past 50 years, the economy has grown exponentially under Democrats. You would just think it grows under Donald Trump.
Correct.
Or the Democrats only increase the budget or all these things. So I do think, work, wages, and
work, wages, wealth.
Those statements I think do work. And I think it is important to back it up.
Back it up.
Which I think I'd like to think it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Sadly, I do think, coming from the Hollywood and the movie business, trailers, posters, marketing works. So I think it is important Democrats have to figure out both those things. They have to be able to answer, what does it mean to be a Democrat? And then show people how it's going to get done.
That's right. And I think, and you're right, where Trump has been masterful, where he has become a fantastic vessel for the frustration. He's just not a vehicle for the solution.
100%.
Right. And I think it's important. You have to identify the pain points that people feel. But the difference between and what's going to help us to win is we've got to actually be the vehicle for the solution and not just a vessel for the frustration.
I love that. I don't want to relitigate the last election, and I love Kamala Harris. I think she is great, and she's done so much, and she works so hard. But the saying nothing is going to change in a time when all people wanted was change.
That's right.
Was a tough thing to say. And I understand, and I think Joe Biden will go down as a great president. Obviously, he made some choices at the end that didn't put us in the best place to win. Last question for you. Everybody that I know is looking for something to do. People want action. They want to be able to, how do we fight back? How do we push back? Those in Maryland, they should vote for you. That's a way to push back,
right.
as you are
right.
actually running for office for re-election.
That's right.
There's obviously a lot of races, elections. What are some things that you think the average citizen in America today, if you'd like to see people do something, whether it's later today or in their lives, what should they be doing? What action should they be taking right now?
So I think getting involved in elections is very important. Making sure you're finding particularly local candidates that you believe in and that you support is going to be very important. That it's not just going to be about the presidential race, right? You got to make sure you're really getting local. But I would actually go back to something that I learned in the military. Just take care of your people. Take care of your people. And what I mean by that, and what I think the way we always learned about it is find the individual ways and the local ways that you can do something good. And find that thing that makes your heart beat faster. So if you're saying, like, I'm really interested in doing more when it comes to food, find organizations that are on the ground that are doing really good work and making sure you're helping to provide that. If you're saying that what I want to do is I want to write letters and make sure that people are not buying Teslas, or I want to do something to help after school programs, like, find the thing that makes your heart beat faster and go do that. Because I don't think there's going to be a singular answer, and I don't think there's going to be a singular thing that people can do. But for me, it always comes back to a basic rule. Take care of your people. And if you do that, I think you're not just going to find a measure of meaning in this moment, but I think you're also going to find that you're going to be part of a larger solution that's going to be necessary right now.
I love that. And I always say to people, just do one thing every day.
That's
Doesn't
it.
matter what it is. Call a friend who maybe is not thinking of going to vote. Donate $1 or something.
Yes.
Post something on social media. There's no right or wrong. And take care of your people. I love that.
That's it.
All right, Wes, I know you have a busy day. Thank you so much for making some time for me and for my community. We really appreciate it. And I support you in everything you do. And
Right back at you.
Honored to call you a friend.
Yes.
Please send your wife our love and your family. And
please do the same with Kelly. And also, we need to get y'all to Coco's.
I can't wait. enjoy your time in the greatest city in the world, in the greatest state in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Sir. All right. Yeah.
You're